Hello, you're watching Leader Speakeasy with me, Rozina Aziz. I'm founder and CEO of Metamorphosa, a former news, media and corporate woman who now mentors, coaches, trains and consults global leaders and entrepreneurs. Today, we will have a conversation on leading marketing into the future. But first, here's an introduction on our guest.
As president of IPG Media Brands Asia from 2012 to 2016, Prashant Kumar oversaw $3.8 billion in billings across the region and handled clients such as Coca-Cola, Exxon, Sony, and Microsoft. He turned the region into the fastest growing in the network on the back of rapid digital transformation and a slew of next-gen offerings. Prashant also served as the CEO of IPG Media Brands Malaysia, where he twice turned the agency into the #1 media agency in the world. He served on the prestigious Cannes Advertising Festival jury in 2009, apart from being a jury member at Crystal Global Festival, France and Dubai Links Awards. He then founded Entropia, which has since been recognized as the world's third fastest growing large agency by Adweek. In today's fast-paced and highly competitive world, how does he lead marketing into the future?
Prashant, welcome to Leader Speakeasy. Let's kick off by discussing your leadership mantra. You've positioned yourself as a marketing futurist with vast experience in media, marketing and advertising. Are all leaders futurists, and what qualities do you need to be considered as one?
Not all leaders are futurists, quite clearly. But I think all leaders have a task balancing today, tomorrow, and day after. And that in these extremely uncertain times when so much disruptive forces are trying to disrupt every established incumbent, that becomes the single most important quality of any good leader. How do you balance between the now, the next, and the new?
Interesting question, but so let me go back a bit to your past background. So in 2016, the marketing futurist made a leap from leading a $3.8 billion business for IPG Media Brands Asia region to become an entrepreneur. And you found a next-gen marketing agency. So that's a huge change. So within 4 years, you grew it into the largest independent ad agency in Southeast Asia. Prashant, what drove you to make that change? And what was, if you remember, one single most significant lesson that you learned from making that leap, what would it be?
Well, in a nutshell, if I looked at what led me to that, it would be the midlife crisis. I had been running Interpublic Group media assets in Asia for almost 4.5 years. We had had a great time. The profits grew 2.5 times. It became the most successful region in the whole network. And then I turned 40, and I was faced with the question, do I want to do it for another 5 years? And I said, no, I got to do something more daring, something more audacious. And, I have always been a bit of an intrapreneur, even when I was working as in the company. In 1999, I started a .com company. So I thought...
In terms of mindset, you were already an entrepreneur.
So maybe this was the time to start from a white sheet and do something which is more fun.
Moving to leading marketing into the future, the world is embracing IR 4.0, and with that, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, Web 3.0, metaverse, extended reality, and the list goes on. So quite simply, how will this affect consumers? If you think about it, the world is inundated with tech overload, and consumerism is fast becoming a dirty word. So let's talk a bit about that. What are your thoughts on that?
So, just as people create media, media creates people too. media, fundamentally, each time a new media technology comes, it changes the way society functions, it changes people's expectations, it changes the way people live their lifestyles. If you look at the history of last 5,000 years, if there is one fundamental Darwinian quest behind all technological shift, it is more life per life. Now, for thousands of years, what it meant was people wanted to live longer life, more years, right? Aging is an ageless cause. However, if you look at the last 20 years, there are two more new dimensions that have been added to it.
Which are?
So, number one, people want to live more life in the same moment. So you can see that, people might be working on their laptop, parallelly they are checking their WhatsApp, and they're also talking to someone who is sitting in front of them. People do this multi-lifing in the same moment all the time. So that is the second dimension. But there is a third dimension. Life as a series of S-curves. People want to live different types of life, a couple of different lives in one life. So every 12 to 15 years, they would pivot some. They would maybe change their profile, their industry, learn something new, move to a new country, learn a new language, maybe change house, grow a new hairstyle. People are living life as a series of S-curves. That's another dimension of living more life per life. Now, if you look at IR 4.0 technologies, for instance, the metaverse, it allows you to live multiple identities in multiple worlds. That is yet another manifestation of more life per life. You see, the mediated component of our living has become so much larger, right? Yet, the dominant form factor is video. And video is a 125 years old format. So, metaverse is the format of living for next 100 years.
So the dimensions become more, life becomes more complex. So if we could flip that conversation on its head, we want to know what would be the most important driving force with all those the trends changing for consumers. What would be the important driving force for marketing, and not just for marketing, but also for C-suite leaders? They call the shots ultimately.
So clearly, it is very obvious that if you look at where marketing strategy happens today, they're still following the templates and frameworks and concepts of the 80s and 90s. So where marketing strategy happens today and what works in the marketplace, there is a vast chasm. And this is an issue around the world.
So the leaders are not moving as fast?
Are not moving as fast. The strategic thinking is not moving as fast. And that was the main reason I wrote this book, Made in Future, to bring the two together, to ensure that marketing is reconceived from a white sheet as per the customer expectations of today, the media, the channel, the marketplace, how it's been reshaped in the last 20 years, requires marketing to be rethought from a white sheet.
So who will succeed in the new world order?
Somebody who is able to bring the best of both worlds together. So we pick up the best of the traditional marketing, but we rethink how do we integrate the data and the technology and the creativity together into one seamless interplay in order to connect strategy with execution, so that we can be more relevant, so that it can drive growth in sync with where the customers are.
So let's bring that discussion back to Malaysia. What sort of money is on the table? Because that's what drives a lot of businesses and leaders. And how well are we positioned, our marketing leaders and our C-suite leaders, to drive innovation-led growth? Because that's who will succeed, as you said earlier.
So I think generally when it comes to process and operations and execution, I think Malaysian marketing does fantastic. But where I see the biggest money on the table, you spoke about that, it is the need to build global brands from Malaysia, whether it's in the area of, the big blue ocean opportunity I see is whether it's in the area of rubber-based consumer products, or whether it's in the area of palm oil-based consumer products, or oil and gas consumer products, because we already have a certain competitive advantage in those areas as a nation. How do we build global consumer-facing brands? And if you look at the history of developed economies, whether it's Japan or Korea or Taiwan, they all have built brands that are now globally known, appreciated and admired, and allow sustainable high margins to these companies, a sustainable competitive advantage for decades after decades. So that, I think, is the largest unmet opportunity for the country.
So we need to go for a quick break. Leader Speakeasy will be back with Prashant Kumar, the founder and senior partner of Entropia and best-selling author of Made in Future. You're back with Leader Speakeasy with Prashant Kumar, the founder and senior partner of Entropia and best-selling author of Made in Future. Earlier, we spoke about where marketers and consumerism are headed into the future. Let's now talk about the exciting launch of Prashant's very first book, Made in Future. So Prashant, it has become a bestseller in India across multiple categories since the launch 10 weeks ago, and I believe you've just launched in Singapore as well.
Yep, that's correct.
So the book, I read bits of the book, and I think it should not just be read by marketers. I think if there is one best reason marketing, and in fact all leaders should get a hold of your book, what would it be?
You know, every organization that is consumer-facing today is struggling with marketing transformation. They all understand that things have changed deeply, and they're all trying to tame that change. Yet, it's not easy, because to bring together data, technology, and creativity into one strategic discipline, into one strategic thinking, is probably the greatest area of unlocked value when it comes to demand creation today. And that was the reason this book was written. It's really comprehensive, and this is the only book you need to read and assimilate in order to understand at a strategic level what needs to be done and how does it all make sense. There is a reason why a lot of marketing transformations fail. You know, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in this over the years across the country. It fails because that strategic integration between data, technology, and creativity is very facile, it's very superficial. So this book has tried to give it a real conceptual integrity and depth.
So I want to go to hype versus reality. So if we look at the recent landmark Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation suit, it's testimony that reality, whilst of course significant and substantive in itself, it can easily and quickly be eclipsed by social media on a scale that has never been seen before. So consumers are able to make up their own mind and judge for themselves and not just be told by media what the facts are. So they don't have to rely on traditional media as you and I know it. So in your book, you wrote about the history of marketing, where hype overtakes substance. In that regard, there is controversy that surrounds marketing in shaping the consumer's mind, promoting illusions over truth. So share with us your perspective.
Well, I may be a little biased because I'm a big Johnny Depp fan, but
I'm neither.
Part of it is not new if you think about it. If you remember the O.J. Simpson
that was not on social
episode,
media.
Even without social media, it did manage to polarize entire America, and the way the case developed was very different. Now, it has taken a whole different dimension because of the power of social media. In fact, if you look at whether it's a movie or whether it's a music, 90% of it actually happens on social media. So what happens on actual screen is actually, in terms of the movie, let's say, it's just a trigger, right? So this case has clearly grown to a different dimension. Now, two things I would like to say. Number one, social media is designed as a centrifugal force. So it has an ability to hollow out the middle and bring the extremities to the front page. So because middle is boring, even though truth more often than not sits in the middle. So this whole case has been given a very, very highly polarized color. I would like to believe that people in general need to start wearing a social media correction lens to be able to separate reality from the social media distortion field that it creates because of the unique nature of algorithms.
Yeah, but that has an impact on how marketers try to shape the opinions of customers.
Well, there is the ethical stance, which is the social media correction lens as a public awareness priority, and how should the code ethicists work with these algorithms. But in terms of the marketers, well, they have to live with this reality as long as it stands today. So clearly, the opportunity is how do you harness this power, these algorithms, to make the best of the brand. And that is why I believe that as a brand, it is very important to be authentic and to be able to take a stand, a point of view when it comes to the larger societal purpose. And that is why you see so many brands more and more talking about meaning, talking about purpose, talking about relevance to the sustainable development goals that the United Nations has put together. I think social media, that's at least one positive part of social media, that it has
Well, I think that's
forced.
also important, especially with the younger consumers. They are more concerned about the larger purpose rather than just consumerism per se.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about made in future. I think with the advent of IR 4.0, the future, I would argue, is already here. Whether we're ready for it is a different matter. So what is your vision for the industry, and where does marketing and where do marketers go from here? Because you said earlier that you do not feel that is a high enough level of readiness. Where do they go?
Yeah. So data-driven experiences, I mean, brands used to be built through anecdotes for thousands of years, and then they started building brands through advertising, and then in the last 20 years, they have built a lot of brands with content. Now is the time brands need to be built with data-driven experiences, because the earlier, more life per life that we spoke about creates a tremendous complexity of living, which means that our living experience will be more and more mediated by data, optimized by data, simulated by data, assisted by data. And that is how brands need to go to the people as well. So data-driven experiences, whether it's great UX, UI, whether it's leveraging the power of betas to inspire people, whether it's personalized creativity at scale, all these components, whether it's augmented reality and virtual reality and all these IR 4.0 technologies, they together form the future of living experience, and marketing needs to use all these blue ocean opportunities in order to make the best of that. So that would be, in a nutshell, the day after part of the future that needs to be made real. There is tremendous unlocked virgin customer value sitting in these areas that are going to be making phenomenal sense in the coming years.
So it sounds like the marketers will need to cut through the complexities that come with IR 4.0 to make the complex simple for consumers. So in your book, just to sidetrack a bit, in your book, you talk about empathy being the God particle of society, I believe, in the last chapter. Yeah. So how does the concept of return on empathy, we're familiar with return on investment, return on equity, but how does the concept of return on empathy relate to marketers and marketing in the future?
See, I believe that marketing is where business meets people. And that is why customer empathy becomes the God particle of all businesses. And marketing is the custodian of that empathy. Now, if you think about empathy, where there is empathy, there is the magic of revelation, because insights can be found in the deepest subconscious recesses of our minds. There is the magic of imagination, because when you understand the why nots at a deeper level, when you understand the whys, you can conceive the why nots.
But
So you
isn't
create
it
the
different,
new.
imagination versus empathy?
But it's born out of empathy, because empathy allows you to understand the whys, which then you can expand into, extrapolate into why nots. And then there is the magic of connection, because the more personal you get when you have empathy, the more universal the ideas, the innovation, the inventions that you beget. So, and finally, when you put all these things together, there is the magic of win-win transactional experiences, which creates profits. So you see how from empathy, insights, imagination, and invention is born, and from that is born the returns. And that is why the book says that financial returns in any business are ultimately distilled to its essence, a return on empathy.
It's not about self, it's about the world and what it wants.
It's about
and
knowing what
empathy
people
on
really
that.
want.
Yes, exactly.
And who is the custodian of that knowledge? It is marketing.
Okay, interesting conversation, Prashant. Now we will move on to the more fun, quick fire questions. You have only 20 seconds to answer
Sure.
each question. Are you all set? 20 seconds.
All right, bring it on.
Okay. So very briefly, we won't tell
It's a bit
anybody.
scary, but go on.
What is the one secret about you that nobody knows about till now?
Okay.
20 seconds.
Well, I sometimes dream. I have this weird dream that I have been dreaming for like maybe 10, 20 years, every once in a while, that when I jump, I can actually fly. You know, I have this extra spring in my steps, which allows me to like really fly in the sky. And it's really strange, but I see that dream again and again, maybe two, 3 times a year for like, I don't remember,
So we
10,
should
12
definitely
years.
look at the interpretation of that dream.
Yes.
Okay, the next one. You're from India and Bollywood is a big thing. Now, let's say somebody makes, a movie on you as a marketing guru. So if an actor is to play you, you're not allowed to play yourself. In that movie, who would it be and why?
Well, I would have loved to say the Iron Man, but I don't think I am that. I think as a person and as a leader, probably closer to the kind of roles that Benedict Cumberbatch plays, which is a mix of intellect and imagination. Of course, there is looks, but well, that's not my thing. Intellect and imagination, I think that would define me.
You're being humble. So the last question, other than work and children, because most guests say they're children, what keeps you awake at night?
Well, I actually sleep pretty well, but sometimes when I do wake up in the middle of the night and can't sleep, let's say, for no particular reason, I actually fantasize. So I may be fantasizing about what a township on Mars could look like, or I may fantasize that, if I was living in a prehistoric era and I had to advance technology, what stuff could I do first, which is easier with the knowledge that I have today,
So it sounds like the fantasies are always not about the current world.
Oh, no, it's
but
bizarre.
it's the past or...
Yeah, I'm a daydreamer, and it happens to be all the time. Even when I'm jogging, I'm usually fantasizing about weird things.
Okay, thanks, Prashant. A big thank you to the Entropia founder and senior partner, as well as the best-selling author of Made in Future, Prashant Kumar, for an insightful conversation on leading marketing and C-suite leaders into the future. Be sure to join us on Leaders Speakeasy with Luqman and Rozina for conversations on leadership as the country and the world strive to bounce back after the pandemic. I'm Rozina Aziz, wishing you the very best in your career, business and leadership journey. Stay safe, stay resilient.
Thank you. Thank you.